Hello. Hi, good evening, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry, I just got a little late waking up. So let's get started. So let's start, right? So we will be today, like in the one of the previous session, we had talked about that thing, right? Clustering and trend lines. We had seen, right? How we use the trend lines and the clustering techniques. So those were things that we had seen, that subtotals and totals and some of the reference lines. So what we'll do is basically today I would like to just show you that how we are going to explore the how do we make the box plot, right? So how you can get the box plot in the tablet. So that is something we are going to see today. So let me just share a data file for that. Did you all get a chance to work on the Titanic case study that I shared yesterday?
Yeah, I saw the case study but haven't started it. Have looked into it.
Me also, I didn't start it.
Sorry?
But it already includes a TubeX file with all the case studies, and so I was just looking into it but haven't started exactly. But this weekend maybe we can start.
Also, in that, I have shared a complete set. So you have the document where it's written what you have to do, the data sets, and plus I've also shared the Tableau file, what the
Yeah.
end product has to look like. So if in case you get stuck somewhere that you feel that you are not able to do something, you can just open that for that reference and you can try to investigate how that is done. And still, if you are not able to understand it, we can discuss it in the class as well, that how to achieve that particular chart.
Okay. I mean, we can also build up with our own charts, right? Instead of the same thing like in the CubeX file, we can also, based on the questions, we can also work with different charts.
So the idea is, because in all the charts, there are some tricks that are there. So, so you will, when you will try to do if you will try to create the same things, there are a lot of new the things that will come. So
Okay,
if you
first we
just try
got
to
something and okay.
first replicate the same thing, and then if you feel that you can add some more charts and add some more analysis, then add more story pages to it.
Okay, okay. Yeah, basically we need to replicate and with the stories, right? We need to create the story as well. Okay.
So it's a story that has to be.
Okay. And Amita was asking about the case study in group. I totally forgot after the SQL session.
Which one?
Um One is KPMG and one is like we didn't talk much about that. Even we didn't start work. Something related to the call history database.
Call history.
You shared two case studies simultaneously. One is on that logistic KPMG, and next is something related to calls or some. I can just let you know in the group what is the name of that.
Okay, I'll just share that once. I'll share that. You want a solution of that, right?
No analysis. You asked us to come up with your own analysis on the sample superstore. And you said you will be sharing your analysis on KPMG and another case study on SQL.
KPMG, let me do it. So KPMG, I'll do it today, like what I did. So I'll share that today.
Okay. Yeah, other one I'll just come up with a name. I'm not sure right now.
Sure.
This TWBX file is not opening for me. It's saying this book is not available in the Tableau public.
Now it will not open in Tableau public. This file will not open in Tableau public. This will open only in your licensed software, or you can download Tableau Reader, right? So you can download Tableau Reader from the Tableau website. Just Google Tableau Reader download. It's a free software. So it will open in that, but in that case, in the Tableau Reader, you won't be able to see how that is created. I mean, you will just be able to see the final story.
Okay, okay.
Since I'm opening in desktop, it is visible to me, or generally it works like this. This TubeX files, we need to download the reader.
This TWBX file, basically that Tableau public doesn't support that. So if you have a licensed Tableau desktop, in that it will open.
Okay.
Oh God, Gayatri. Gayatri.
In fact, I have one license of that if anyone wants to use, right? Actually, I used this. Actually, I used one of my cousin's ID just a week back. So I got one product key that can be used on 2 systems. Does anyone of you want? You can install the licensed software. Just activate that product with that. So it will work for 1 year.
But are we allowed to use that ID in multiple machines?
2 machines you can use it.
Yeah, I know, 2 machines. Okay. Yeah, meantime, since I have this desktop, we are just discussing our queries. If at all, if any of others needs, we will just put a note to you.
Sorry?
No, regarding the ID, right? I'm using desktop. I have for another 4 months. If any of us needs, I'll discuss with other girls because most of the people didn't join. We will put a note to you.
You can let me know. So I'll
Yeah.
share that up.
Thanks for that.
Okay. See, so this is the data set that we have, right? So like this is a competitor research data set. So in this, what we have is, say, suppose, like these are the 4 states of, these are the 4 different states of Australia, like Queensland, Western Australia, Victoria, New South Wales. Now, what we want to do is basically, we are given what is the profit that they have been making across there is a data of 30 competitors where we are given that how much profit they made. Suppose, this is the data of shoe business. So they are telling us that the competitor one, he made a business of this much percent in Queensland, this much in Western Australia, this much in Victoria, and this much in New South Wales. So we have the profit margin of all the 30 competitors in the 4 regions, right? So what we want to do over here is that suppose you are a data analyst and a client has reached out to you and they are asking that, okay, Amit, this is a market research data. So based on this, in which city or in which state of Australia should I start my business? The client wants to start a business only in one of the regions. So you have to suggest in which region he or she should be starting the business in. Right. So how will you suggest it?
First, we'll be checking the sales progress by region wise, state.
So you have only this data. This is the data that you have.
Okay, region wise sales, we will just first need to see the progress.
But we don't have sales. We just have profit margin. I don't have the sales.
We can group that profit margin by these are all the regions you said.
These are the 4 regions.
Since this much data is only available, we can see the profit margin, right? Based on the region.
Profit margin is given to us. Like for Queensland, for competitor one, this is the profit margin. And the same competitor when he is working in Western Australia, this is the profit margin. And in Victoria, this is the margin, and in New South Wales, this is the margin.
We'll select the place where the profit margin is the highest. So like maybe for competitor one, it says VIC. So sorry, NSW. So it's like 8.54. So I mean maximum, I mean people need over there. So the profit margin is higher over there. So maybe.
But it can be low also. Like if you come over here for competitor 15, it is higher in Queensland.
Yeah, so maybe we can find a, I mean, mid position where.
Mid position as in?
As in, I mean, where everybody is on an average, they're making a, I mean, sustainable profit, I would say.
So can I say I can find the average of them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if I find the average of this, so I get this is the average, right? So based on this, I see the average is coming the highest for the fourth, the last week, and that is New South Wales. So can we suggest that the user should start the client should start his business in New South Wales?
I mean, if I would have been there, I would suggest the third one, because I don't want all the competition to make all the profit. There should be an area where expansion is also possible. So maybe the third highest one.
We need to see where the competitors
are there, but I mean, we should also survive. If all of them are already, they have already captured the market. So at least one step back where there is a scope of expansion.
Okay, so you go with this.
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone else? Okay. Now, when you find the average is a scam. And what's that scam? If you have these 4-5 competitors, right? Suppose this is the state one. Right, so this is the data that you have, and if we simply go with the average, right? If you apply the average over here, now based on this data, in which region will you suggest the business should be started? State 1 or state 2?
State 1.
Why?
Because overall the profit is high. I mean, you can compare state 1 and state 2 and marginal. I mean, I would say that comparatively, it's like in state 2, it's only 3%, but in state 1, it's 8%. So it's like considerably high over there.
Mm-hmm.
And for all the fields, except the last one.
If I come over here, we have gone on the basis of average over here. Then why didn't we not consider the same thing in this? Because the same thing can happen over here also. There could be certain competitors who might have made a high profit in Victoria, due to which the number got 7.7 or 7.73, and rest of the others were smaller, on the smaller side, right? So can I say that this now over here, this number or the outcome that we have given is not totally reliable?
I think we need to see the consistency of the profit.
Yeah, profit margin. We
In
need
each
to check the
region.
profit ratio, whether it is consistent.
So definitely right now these are 30, right? So we can't go to the 30 values and check one by one whether it's consistent or not. And if these numbers were, right now we have a data of 30 competitors. If suppose the data was of 1000 competitors, in that case, consistency, I wouldn't have been able to check by looking at the numbers, right? So what we do in that scenario is, now this is the average that you have found. Okay. We find what is called as median. Okay, we find the median for that purpose. Now median is, which is basically the data that you have. Okay. How do we find the median? Anyone?
Yeah, you say that the
Average.
middle value,
Two middle values. Yeah,
the middle value.
it's the average of two middle values.
So basically median is the center value.
Center, yeah.
But for that, first you have to sort the data. Now this is the data that you have. You sort it. Now what you do is, these values are 5. So if there are 5 values, what is the value that is lying in the middle? That is 8.8.
8.8, yeah.
So median will be 8.8. And we
Yeah.
have a formula also in Excel, that is median. If I find the median of this comes out to be as, let me just increase the decimal, right? 8.8%. And same way, I will have to first sort this data also. So if you will sort it in the ascending order, so even if I don't do it, the Excel formula will be able to find it, right? So I'm just trying to explain from the manual perspective. So from here, the median is coming as 4%. Okay. Now, median is something, median is unaffected by extreme values. Okay, like basically if in your data you have some very high value or some very low value, right? So median doesn't get affected by that. What do I mean by that is, suppose if this was 40%, if I change this to 20%, okay, if I change this to 20%, you will observe that my average has changed, but my median hasn't, right? So my average has changed, but my median hasn't. So the idea, the reason we find the average and the median is, if you find that there is the average and median are very nearby to each other. If the average and median are very nearby to each other, that would suggest that you have kind of consistent type of values in your data. But if you find that there is a big difference that is coming in your average and median, that means if the median is low, if the median is on the lower side and the average is on the higher side, so if the average is high, you can tell right away that there is some value which is very high from the rest of the data. And the other way also it can happen. Suppose this was not 20%, this was minus 20%. Now, if you see, the average has reduced. So because there is a value which is very small as compared to the other value, if the average comes out to be very low as compared to median, you can tell right away from that data that there is a value which is very, very low as compared to the rest of the data points in that state. Getting the point?
Yeah, if median is low, average is high, we can predict that some data point is very high.
Correct.
It's like finding outliers.
So basically, this is something, the values which behave differently,
Okay.
which are so those values are called as outliers. Now in this scenario, this particular value, this minus 20% becomes an outlier. So I cannot consider this value for the purpose of my calculation. So this value will be an outlier for me now. Okay.
If there are so many values as outliers that can be easily found in charts.
So that so when you get a box plot, so box plot gives you that. Box plot will show you
Okay.
all the outliers. What all values
Because
are
in
outliers.
Excel, right, I can't go and check. So whether, no, I'm just asking whether we can find this easily in chart, these outliers, if there are more.
No, so box plot will show you the outliers.
Okay.
And also there is a, so how do we find the outlier, right? So there is a technique for that. I will say formula for finding the outliers. So how we do that is basically in the data that you will be having. Okay. So what we do in that scenario is basically for this data, what we do is this median. With median, we find quartiles. Quartiles are basically the value which is lying at 25%, 50%, 75%. Okay, so now just see over here, 50% that I have written over here. This is nothing. 50% is median only. This is median. 50% is called as median also, or Q2. So there are number of names that we use. So in terms of quartiles, we call it as Q2. In terms of percentiles, we call it as 50%. And in this, a normal other word we use for 50% is median. Have you heard this term somewhere, percentiles?
Yes,
Yeah. No.
in exams.
Exams, right? CAT exam.
Yeah.
We say, that my, I have scored 97 percentile, or I have scored, 99%. I never give that a CAT exam, but people like say like this, right? So now what happens over there is when you say 90, when a person says that he has got 98 percentile, what does he mean?
He's like above 98% students, I mean, total.
Right,
So,
right. So basically that 98 percentile means that if suppose 1000 students appeared in that exam, right? He has a 98 percentile. That means 2% people are above him. That means there are 20 students, 20, right? 20 students who are better than him. And the rest of the 79 students are behind him. Correct? This is what this 98 percentile means. If a person says that he got 99 percentile, that means there is 1% of the people, that is only 10 students who are better than him, and a person says he has got 100 percentile, that means he is among the top ones, that there is no person who has score of more than that, right? The same is the thing that we are discussing over here. When you say 50%, which we also call it as median, what was the 50%? That was 8.8, correct? So can I say that the 5 competitors, there are 2 competitors who are better than him and 2 competitors that are bad than him, because he is the median guy, the guy lying in the middle. So there are 50% people who are better than him, 50% people who are not better than him, right? So similarly, we can find the 25%, which we call it as Q1, and this we call it as Q3. So 25% is the middle value of this and this, right? The median and all the values that you calculate. So basically we have a formula for that also. That is quartile, right? So you can find the quartile and you give the range. Which quartile do you want to find? The first quartile. This one, 25th percentile. So you use that, it gives you 0.85. So this is just you have to convert it to percentage. You see 8.5. The value lying in the middle of the median and this, that will be 25 percentile value, right? This is the 25th percent. And similarly, if you want to find the 75%, what will be that? Yes.
Na-
What is the
9.
9%, right? The value which is lying in the 50th and the 100. So 75%. So if you come over here equals to quartile, this is the values, and we have to find the third quartile. Right? Getting this, these three values?
Yes.
Okay. So now how do I find the outlier based on this? So for finding the outlier, there is a formula. First of all, we find IQR. Now this is, something asked a lot in the interviews also. IQR stands for interquartile range. So what we do is we find IQR is called as Q3 minus Q1, right? Q3 minus Q1. This is the quartile 3 minus quartile 1. That is what an interquartile range is called. So what will be the IQR in this case? For the state 1, what is the IQR?
0.05. I mean
0.5.
0.5.
0.5, right? So IQR comes out to be as 0.5. Now what we will do is we say equals to 1.5 multiplied by IQR. That comes out to be as 0.75, right? This comes out to be as 0.75, right? This is 1.5. I'll write it down over here. 1.5 multiplied by this number. Okay. So this is basically, this is basically, we call it as the value which we have calculated. Now what I will do is I had Q1 and Q3. Okay, what was Q1? Q1 is 8.5. From the quartile 1, I will subtract. I will say this number minus this number, which comes out to be a 7.75.
Sorry to
then-
interrupt, Amit, excuse me.
Huh?
Yeah. What is that 1.5? I missed that one.
It's the formula. Or? No,
What is that 1.5?
star.
No, this is a standard formula that is created. So
Oh,
just
okay,
stay
okay.
over here. Just stay for a minute. You will understand it over here. So
Sure.
IQR is Q3 minus Q1. Then what we do is this is 1.5 into IQR. Now this is a standard formula that has been created to calculate the outliers. Okay. So what we do is 1.5 into this IQR, that is 0.5 into 1.5, that gives me 0.75. So from the quartile 1, I will subtract that. I will say Q1 minus this value, and Q3 was 9%. So 9% will be, in the third quartile, I will add that value. This plus this 0.75, that comes out to be 9.75 basically. Okay. So this is something which will come out to be as, this was 9.75, right? So any value which will be less than this 7.75, that will be an outlier. And any value that is more than 9.75, that will be an outlier. So that is how outliers are calculated. Right. So for calculating the outliers also, there is a specific formula. We don't go by the I will not say that we go by some our own the the inner sense that which can be, which could be more or which could be less. So we have a proper formula defined for that. That what you do is you find all your quartiles, Q1, Q2, Q3. Then you find the interquartile range, that is Q3 minus Q1. Then you multiply that with 1.5. Okay, you multiply that by 1.5. And then from the quartile 1, you will subtract it. Because see, now, can anyone tell me why are we subtracting it on the Q1 and why are we adding it on the Q2, Q3?
Yeah, because one is before median and one is after median. No. No?
No. So basically, see, what outlier is something, which can be a big number also, or it can be a small number also, right? Right? Because suppose, I have the weight of the students. So all the people are like very, very heavy, right? One is of 90 kg, another is of 95 kg, another is of suppose 89 kg, right? Another person is of suppose 100 kg. Now their average will come out to be as, their average coming as 93.5. But in this group of students, if I take a toddler over here, now a toddler's weight is suppose 2 kg. Now if I find the average, right? So now I find the average. Now average has got reduced to 75 just because of that one very small baby who was of 2 kg, and I have taken him now to consider the average weight. Overall average goes down to 75, which was previously 93.5. So can I say that this is an outlier? Right? This is an outlier because this is different from the rest of the data.
Yeah,
Similarly,
value.
right? Similarly, if I have the same data over here, and in this, I take, the weight of, say, suppose some animal, right? Suppose I take the weight of hippopotamus by mistake, who is of 300 kg now, right? Now, if I again find the average of this, now average has increased, it has become 134, right? So again, can I say that this is the outlier in this? Because he is very heavy as compared to the rest of the people. Because when I included him, my average came 134, which is more than the actual weight of all the other people, right? And in this case, it is average that I'm getting 75. It is less, it is less than the actual weight of all the 5 people, 4 people. So in this case, this becomes an outlier, and in this case, this becomes an outlier. And if I have this data with me, I have the weight of a baby also, I have a weight of hippopotamus also. So can I say both of these value will be outlier in this case now? Will I say that?
Yes.
Right? So these both will be outliers now because one is very small, one is very high. They will both change the, my outcome. Because of that, my outcome will become, if I will calculate this, although you might see that the average looks like good, right? 112. It's still 112, which is not as per what the actual weight of most of the people over here, right? So outlier can be on both the sides. So that is why what we do is we are finding the lower limit and the higher limit. That means if the value is less than this, it's an outlier. If the value is higher than this, it's an outlier. So that is exactly what we have done over here in finding the Q1 and Q3. We have added that 1.5 in the, subtracted it from the Q1 so as to get a lower limit, added up in the Q3 as to get the higher limit. Now, is it clear what this Q1 and Q3, why we are finding it and how the outliers are detected?
No, I need an explanation for this Q1 because I got this IQR and extreme low and high values, and finding the outliers, I got that concept as well. And the upper limit and lower limit, I'm not getting it 100%.
Now, if I have this number for you,
Yeah.
right? Now, if I give this range to you,
Yes.
now if I say over here that in this I have one number, let me So if I say this, these are the numbers that I have. Okay. Now these are the three numbers that I have given you over here.
Okay.
Now, how will you tell me, like, in which range should I consider that this is an outlier, or this is an outlier, or this is an outlier?
Based on any value like average?
So
Or-
average of what?
No, based on some value. See, previously you were showing average. So we can easily find the extreme low and extreme high values in the data set.
So I have given you the same stuff right now over here. Now my
Okay.
question is, I have these three sets of data with me. In which of the data set can I say that I have an outlier, or shall I say I don't have any outlier in all the three sets? Like when I gave you this same thing previously, I gave you this data like this, and I said, is there any outlier? You were able to tell that yes, 2 is an
Yeah.
outlier, correct?
Yes.
But now I have given you these three data sets over here. Now my question is, are all these three data sets okay? Or can I say that in one of the sets, there is an outlier?
80 seems to be okay to me.
Why?
Because we already have a data in 80 series, right? So I can't say that as an extreme low value.
But that's an 89. If you take a look at it, that number is 89. If I'll make it a 79, so then will you say that's an outlier?
Yeah.
Now it's an outlier, and
Yes.
80 is not an outlier.
If I compare with other values, yeah, it's somewhat low.
So, I mean, 80 is an outlier, but 70.
89, 90, 95, 100, it is somewhat low.
No, so see, you are going on that estimation, right? Just guess,
Yeah.
you are going right now. You're going
Yeah.
on the guesswork now.
Yes.
But if I give you a certain number, that if I say that now I have done some calculation, now I am saying that any number which will be less than 85 will be treated as an outlier. If you get that range, that
Okay.
any number which is less than 85, you know that 89 is the lower limit. That any number which will be less than 85, that will be an outlier. And similarly, you find a upper limit, that if any number which is more than 105, that will be an outlier. Will it be
Okay.
easy for you to
Yeah.
tell that this is an outlier and this is not?
Yes.
Correct? So
Yeah.
this is the same thing that we are finding over here. So if you see right now, when I am finding the lower limit, so in the lower limit, what I have done is whatever is the lowest number, I have subtracted something from that. I have subtracted something, right? Because lower number will be on the lower side,
Yeah.
small side.
Yes.
And when I'm talking about the higher limit, that is something on the higher number. So
Higher.
I'm adding something to that highest number. So I'm setting up that limit that, okay, above this, the number will be an outlier for me,
Outlier. Okay.
right? So the same thing we have done over here. So for that, we have a proper statistical formulas that are defined. So where what we do is, first of all, we find the interquartile range.
Yeah.
That then we multiply that by 1.5. Then we find Q1 and Q3. Q1 is the lower quartile, Q3 is the higher quartile. So from that quartile 1, we subtract this number. From the higher quartile, we add this number.
Added.
So we get, so this becomes the lower limit, and this becomes the upper limit.
Okay, after that IQR, right, you're just subtracting this in order to set the lower limit, and this one you're adding it to the higher number in order to set
Upper
the
limit.
upper limit, so that
Upper
it
limit.
will be helpful for you to find the outliers.
Outliers. Right.
Anything which lies lower than this, upper than this. Correct?
Correct.
Got it now. Yeah, thank you.
So now this whole things that we have now, discussed over here, right? So there are a lot of things that we have discussed. So technically we have discussed the median, quartiles, outliers. Now all these things are easily calculated by are easily defined by a chart which is called as box plot. And it is one of the very, very important charts which is used for to understand the distribution of the data. And let's first of all see how this chart looks like, right? That is first of all very important to understand how the chart looks like. Now this is exactly how a box plot now looks like. Okay, now this is like, let's use a better chart. Now this is a box plot. This is a simpler one to understand. Now this is how a box plot looks like. So this is a box plot for female and this is a box plot for male. So when you create a box plot will give you this. I'm trying to pick. Now just take a look at this, right? So we have two classes, M and B. Some diagnosis was done. And we have some data over here, like what is the area. Now, if you take a look at this, what happens in the box plot is box plot will give you, this is this line that you see over here. This is the calculation of quartile 1. This is the median. And this is the quartile 3, right? And then it gives you the value, which is minimum, maximum, and the values which are coming outside this box, they are called as outliers. Now, this is how a box plot gives you all that information in one go, right? So it's nothing, this looks like a box, but it is just a design that they have created. But technically it gives you quartile 1, quartile 2, quartile 3, minimum, maximum, and these are the outliers. Correct?
The minimum
Is it making
maximum
sense?
value.
How this box plot comes up? And box plot is called as box and whisker chart also.
You said the minimum maximum value, right? Is that the limits you explained just now?
Now, what we do in this is, if you see, there are two box plots, 1 and 2. One is having a bigger box, one is having a lower box. Now, what does that signify? That simply means, when the length of this box is big, when the size is big, that means the variation in the data is high. Data is variate. I mean, there is high variation. Data points are, have a good gap between them. And when the size of this box plot is small, that means the data has less variation. Variation in the data is less. The data points are very nearby to each other. That is what this length of the box tells us. Now, this is what a box plot looks like, right? So this is the same thing that we will be building up in the Tableau now. So let's jump back over there now. So open your Tableau files and load the data. No. So minimum and maximum, not the upper and the lower limits. They are after you remove the data from there, after you remove the quartiles. Now, what is the minimum and maximum value that you have inside that? Like if I come over here now, if I remove the outliers, so minimum value is 89 and maximum value is 100. So that they are the minimum and maximum, not the limit. So what we will do is we will create this file in the, we will pull this, it's a Excel file or CSV file. Sorry, it's a CSV file. file that I have shared. It's a CSV file, computer research. So please load that data. Right. I just need 2 to 3 minutes. In the meantime, you load the data and just pivot this. Right. Just load and pivot the data, and then I'll just get started. Hello. I'm sorry. Yeah. So let's do it. So have you all pivoted this data now?
Yeah.
So when you pivot this side, we can just rename these columns. I can call this as region. This I'll call it as the basically this profit margin. Now you come to the sheet one, where we will build that up. Now what I do over here is I bring the region and I bring the profit margin. Okay. See now, when you drag the profit margin over here, so by default, what happens is Tableau is going to give you the sum of it, right? It aggregates it. But we don't want to find the aggregate, right? We will click on analysis and I will uncheck the aggregate measures. I am saying I don't want to see the sum. I want to see the individual percentages that you have, right? So I will get the individual percentages, right? So you can drag the company also into the tooltip. So you can see that, in New South Wales, this was a profit made by competitor 22, 6, 27. So all the 30 are over here, all the 30 are over here, all 30 are over here, and likewise. Now what you do is simply, we can just first of all reduce the size of the bubbles a little bit like this. And let's change it to the filled bubbles and make it entire view. Right? So I'll just click on analytics pane and I will drag the box plot over here on this chart. And your box plot is ready.
Is there any difference between go to analytics and dragging this box plot, or from the show me to go to that box plot graph?
No, they both are same. Both will give you the same thing. You can click over here and show me also. There is also the same thing. So it comes the same stuff, right? Or you drag it from here. They both are same.
Okay.
Now the chart is ready. Now based on this chart, now which region will you advise your client to start your business in? Should he start his business in New South Wales, Queensland, Victoria, Western Australia? Can I say he should start his business in Victoria now? Because if you take a look at this, I told you, right? When the box plot size is big, that means there is big variation. And when the size is small, there is less variation. Less variation means more consistency, right? So if you see with Western Australia and New South Wales, they have big boxes. So they are something not a good choice because there's a big variation in the profit that I can see. When I comes to Queensland, in the Queensland, there are some outliers also that I can see. There are certain competitors who made extremely high profit. Some made extremely low profit. But when it comes to Victoria, you will see it's more, I mean, in terms of consistency, both look similar, right? Queensland and Victoria, they both have similar size. In fact, it has more, I would rather say it has more consistency. But the idea is that, this is where the median lies in. So median is higher for Victoria. So my preferable choice will be that I should start the business in Victoria now. If you hover your mouse over here, it will give you all the values that we had, we were discussing. So you see upper whisker, upper hinge, median, lower hinge, lower whisker. Upper whisker means this maximum value. Upper hinge means quartile 3. Median is this, and lower value is lower hinge, and the minimum value is lower whisker. This whisker. This is all the lowest value. So these are the values that we get. Okay. Any questions? Anyone on this? Okay. Now, similarly, like just one last little thing that I would like to also discuss over here in Tableau is, so if you open this Tableau, I'm just opening a new file. So, in Tableau, we have a feature of creating an animation chart. So animation chart is something, a chart that has some movements in it, right? So I'll show you what do I mean by that. Suppose let's pull that sample superstore data in this. Okay, very simple task. So if suppose I make a chart over here, I have the sales and the profit. Sales, profit, and I have this. This is the subcategory. Okay, I'm just doing a normal scatter plot. This is a chart that I have created. See, what I can do in this is, if I pick the order date, if I put in the filters, right? So I can select, right? I can select basically that how do we want to show the data. If I say select January 2014, it will show me the data of January 2014 now, right? And if I say show filter, and if I keep changing my filter now, if I keep changing my filter like this, and suppose this filter is changing automatically for me, can I say it will look like an animation chart, a chart that is moving, right? If the filter keeps on changing automatically, right now I'm doing it manually. If this changes automatically, it will give you a feel that the chart is changing automatically. So this is what we call it as an animation chart. And how do we do that is, you just have to drag your field of order date, not in the filters, but in the pages over here. And you right click on this, let's select the month. See, it will give you a controller. If you click on the play button, it will change the filter by itself, right? You see the filter is changing by itself, and it looks like that this chart is moving. So this is called as an animation chart. Although we never use this in the reports and all, somewhere if you have to display a report on your presentation or in your website, that is where we use it. You can control the speed. You want to make it fast, You can do that. Right? You want to play in the reverse direction, you can do that. You want to stop it somewhere, you can stop it. So this is called as an animation chart now, right?
If I want to add this month-on-month sales, right, in the story, will it work, this animation?
Sorry?
If I want to show this animated sheet for month-on-month sales for this particular year, if I add it in a story, will that still work?
It will go over there also.
But
You are
is it
showing this.
acceptable if it is for a presentation?
So if you see over here, so it will work
Okay.
over here.
Okay. No, in real time, right? Is this thing acceptable for end user presentation?
See, these are for representation purpose. See, I will, I'll share a link with you.
Mm-hmm.
This is a small video. Try to watch this video now. This one.
Pacific Karolinska Institute, an undergraduate course called
I'll share this
Global
link.
Health.
So over here, he chooses
Percent.
this chart.
The world is 92 states of America. Yeah, you have Bangladesh still among the African countries there, but not Bangladesh. It's a miracle that happens in the 80s. The imams start to promote family planning and they move up into that corner. And in 90s, we have the terrible HIV epidemic that takes down the life expectancy of the African countries, and all the rest of the world moves up into the corner where we have long lives and small family, and we have a completely new world. Let me make the comparison.
Right. So these type of charts you don't put in the reports and all. These are like, this guy is also giving, he was having a TED talk and he over there, he used this type of a chart. Right. I'm sharing this link. You don't try to watch this video. It's very good video. I mean, you will, it has humor also, and it has, the chart that he has created, there's a complete explanation behind this. So go through it. You will get to know the real advantage of animation chart, like, where you can actually use it. So it's not something you will be using everywhere. I have never used it in my career, right? Nor anywhere, but this is a feature. Sometimes these things are asked in the interviews as well. So you have a that feature and you can explain it out. Right?
Yeah, I watched it once. It's very fun. Like it's about population of world.
So it's basically in this, he had shown that how over the years from 1960 up till 2005, that how for the different countries, when the fertility rate decreased, it increased the life expectancy. This chart is basically showing this complete analysis is showing that. And if you would like to make the same chart, I have the data also for this. The same data that he has used, I have the same data with me, which you can use. You will have to join the multiple data sets and everything, and you will be able to create the same chart at your end. Okay. Yeah, so we can do the forecast and attributes right away. So basically what we have is like the same chart that I have read over here, right? So when you come over here now, if you make a chart over here, like just let's make a time series analysis. Right, so if I bring this chart over here, so I pick up, see now what is forecast, right? Forecast means when you have to predict something for the upcoming time, right? Something for the upcoming intervals now. So what I do for that is, so now forecasting is always based on time period. So let me make a time series chart and let me bring the sales in this. Okay, let's keep the chart at yearly level, monthly level. So if you take a look at this, now this is the month-on-month sales, the actual sales that was generated. We have that in the data. If you want to do the forecasting, right? If you want to forecast that what will be the sales in the upcoming time. So we have the data up till 2017. So if you click on analytics, right? So in this, you will find an option of forecast. So you just have to drag that forecast over here and Tableau will do the forecasting for you. So by default, what happens is Tableau does the forecasting for 13 months. By default, Tableau forecasts the data for 13 months. So you will notice over here that the forecasting is being done. And when I say 13 months, in those 13 months, it is like 1 plus 12. And what is 1? 1 is the last month of the data, right? So basically we had the data up till December 2017. So what Tableau does is it takes the last month also, December 2017, and the complete next year. It forecasts the data for those 13 months by default. And how does it forecast the data? It's just that it uses two things, seasonality and trend, right? Seasonality means how the things are changing on a yearly basis. Is there any seasonality in the data? So it will identify that seasonality and it will find the trend, right? Trend is how the overall overall sales are changing, right? Over a period of years, we saw that the sales have increased. So it will take those two things into considerations and it will forecast the data for you. So this is now telling that based on the forecasting in the month of Jan 2018, Feb, March, April, this is what Tableau is predicting. And predictions are something which are not always correct, right? You all would have seen that when you see the temperature forecast comes like that tomorrow's temperature could be 30 degrees plus minus 2. That means there can be a variation of 2 degrees up or down, correct? So the same thing this forecast also gives. It is saying this is what the prediction is, but it can be high as up till here or it can be low up till here. So it gives you both the two limits. It can go above also and it can be lower also within this range. So this is what a forecast is. Right, so forecasting can only be done on time series analysis. You just make your chart and you just have to drag your forecast, the feature on this.
Basically predicting the future sales in next year, likewise, right? Based on the data.
Correct. So this forecast is for the next year. If you right click on this and you say forecast options, you can change it also. If you want it for exactly 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, you can change the time period also. And you will see now it gives you forecast for 3 years. But it is never advisable that, like you have 4 years of data and you are now predicting for the next 3 years. We generally predict it for 3-4 months only.
Okay. Can I say it's just a prediction? Based on
prediction only. It's a prediction only.
Okay. Now, can you show that notepad once? Here, okay. 1 is nothing but the last month of the last year data available, right? In
the actual data last month. Yes.
Okay.
So it does the forecast for that month also, and then the next 12 months.
Okay. Do we still use this for end users just to show?
No, we generally, forecast, because this is just an exponential smoothing that you see in the data.
Okay.
So basically what happens is that, typically what we do is we use R, Python, because they have more sophisticated, the linear models that we can create, because this is very basic one. We are just using time and sales. But definitely the forecast depends on a lot of factors, right? Economic growth, the customer feedback, likewise. So that is where, if you have to basic analytics, you can use this feature, but it is not the recommended one. So typically you will be using some more sophisticated statistical tools over there.
Okay.
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 Amit, this is mentioned in my resume. So although I don't know much of this, so what is this heat map and the first one? Pareto?
Heat map is just this, right? Your this tree map. Remember we created this in this.
Okay. Mhm.
So heat map is also called as this. So like for example, if you make a chart over here, you have the subcategory. You have the sales. You make a heat. This is tree map or heat map. That is the same thing. So heat map, we use in that context the coloring effect. Dark color means high sale. As the color is getting lighter, that means the sales are low. So this is a heat map or a tree map, the same.
Mhm. Okay. And the first one, Pareto analysis.
See, Pareto analysis, is something we use for doing the 80-20. Have you heard of 80-20 rule?
No.
Okay. See, 80-20 rule is like there was a, this guy Pareto. He created this Pareto rule. He came up with this that, like 80% of the work is done by 20% of the workforce, right? That was the 80-20 rule. That if suppose you have a company, like 80% of the sales will come from 20% of your product line, right? Suppose if I talk about Apple, now suppose Apple has 10 products in the market. Now the Pareto rule says that 80% of the sales will be generated by 2 of its products, and rest of the 20% of the sales will be generated by remaining 80% of the products. That is what that Pareto rule states.
Okay.
Okay. So what we do is we try to build that same thing in the form of a chart. So if I show you Pareto chart.
Is it like a combination charts?
This is a combination chart of line and bar chart.
Okay.
So this is what a Pareto chart looks like. Now it is saying like this is a, let's pick up a diagram. It's easier to understand this. So if you see now, this is a Pareto chart for defect. We are finding that this for some company, they are saying that what type of different defects do they get. They, suppose this looks like some delivery courier company, like they got a defect in the contact number, that the number of that, the customer was wrong, price code was wrong, supplier code was wrong, part number was wrong, schedule date was wrong. So what are the kind of defects the the company gets most of the time? So if you take a look from this chart, so 80% is something which is coming over about here, right? So 80% of the defects, right? 80% of the defects are coming from these three types. So that means that if we resolve these three things, our 80% of the defects will be gone. We are only left with 20% of the defects now. So that is what that Pareto chart is used for. Right. So I've given you the explanation, but no worries, we will make the chart also over here in the tab.
Okay. Okay.
Right.
And like, yeah. And in SQL, if they ask about like stored procedure, how do you create it? And so how do we do that?
So you just have to create
Yeah,
procedure as given,
Mhm.
and you write the query inside that.
Yeah. So that's about it. That's the only thing that I have to say. Because
So
every point they're mentioning in resume as separately, so it's get confusing that maybe they're trying to fill up the resume stating everything, like all of the graphs they're mentioning about that. So I'm not-
actually, I also saw that resume was very, very, some of the sample they were very heavily filled. So because I'm not sure like what's how it is being used. Because if I just show you my resume, right, I just keep it very simple. I have just kept it very
cut to cut. And every time they're mentioning about SSRS, SSIS, so
That is completely different.
Yeah.
Right? There must be a side.
but they're writing almost everything. You are also a Scrum Master over there. I mean, they're writing about that also, and people are asking about that. So I'm not sure what do I have to do.
How many did you give any of the interviews now?
No, my resume is not getting shortlisted at this point of time. Although, I mean, none of the interviews that I have faced. It's only that the vendors ask me to submit the resume, and I say, okay, I authorize you to submit my resume, but nobody ever came back.
And
Yeah,
I mean,
there's-
doing any certifications really help? Like some of the universities have, right, data analytics certificate. Does it really helps in
Sure.
getting a
I'll just tell you that.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
like if I tell you like I've just kept it very simple, right? Like, this is more of my training resume. So I've mentioned all my skills and it's like tools that I use for the analysis purpose. Simple that way, right? So like working with the other firms, the clients that I have worked and what all technology did I used upon over there. So those are the sort of things that I have mentioned in my resume now. And if you will see, I have not even kept all the experience, just the recent ones, and the older ones I've just mentioned the profile name and for the duration I worked upon. So that is how I have maintained my resume in this. So maybe we can keep it that way because this is the trainings that I deliver right to just the clients over here. So I think it could be on a simpler side, and that will add a lot of value. A person will be able to understand it easily, like what you worked upon. So we don't need to explicitly mention each and everything, right? Like our heat map, scatter plot, because
Yeah.
that is self-understood that if a person has no scatter, so that is something a person would be any which ways knowing that over there. Right. So these are certain things. I mean, I'll also discuss it like how we can improvise that process, right? And we'll also discuss on that how you can we'll have some mock sessions to make those things clear.
Yeah. And they're mentioning about OLAP cubes. And
That's again SSAS. I myself have never created them. I mean, I've never used. I've used them, but not from the developer side. I've not created them because I'm more into the data science side, right? So my job is to analyze the data, so not to create the cubes or do that ETL role. That SSIS is a ETL part. So this is a different profile, MSBI profile, business intelligence.
I asked the recruiter, I mean, to remove many of the points from there, but ultimately she has to get it shortlisted. So she was like, I can't remove so many things from there. Otherwise, it's now difficult to get shortlisted.
Everything, yes, even I know. But most of the things we haven't heard, first of all.
Yeah.
By looking at bracket pins.
Because that will be then, it will leave a bad impression, right? Because suppose he asks you 3 questions on those things only which you have not studied, but they are mentioned in your resume. So actually, no, it leaves a bad impact in that sense that the profile is, is not a true version of you, right? Even if you write 3 things, but you know all those 3 things, that is a better stuff rather than writing 10 stuff out of which we don't know most of the things. Because see, for us, the hiring manager, your profile is what you are for him, right? Because he doesn't know you, so what he sees on the resume, he's going to assume that that is what I mean. Basically, you have it. Like, see, from the shortlisting perspective, it totally makes sense, right? Because initially, you definitely will have to give 4 or 5 interviews also to get that flavor that how and what type of questions will be asked. So initially, I can say that it should not be removed, so that at least your resumes get more, you get more shortlistings, and even if you get failed in the resume, at least you got that experience, and that was the main objective. Right, but after giving 4 or 5 interviews and your preparation would be done, you will be more structured that okay, I know these things and I would like to keep these things only into my resume, so that now next time when I go over there, I am more to, you have more chances of clearing it rather than getting fired or something like that.
I actually called my recruiter and said that, I mean, is it possible for me to get placed? Because I mean, I am filling up, I'm giving them the authority like 10-15 emails and every day, and none of them are coming. I mean, they're calling me and they're saying that they'll be submitting the profile, but nobody ever comes back and say, yes, it has been shortlisted. So I was wondering.
Actually, it actually takes time, to be very honest, right? because I myself, I also, I'm all involved in the hiring activities over here, right? So what happens is basically, so I hire people, basically I take the interview. So there is a team of recruiters. So what happen is, so the recruiter, pings the hiring manager, right? We have shortlisted the profile. So please go through the profiles and let us know to whom shall we call for the interview. Now, when it comes to me, when I'm involved with the other tasks, so I certainly ignore those emails for that point in time. So right, the recruiter will follow up 3-4 times. Then I get to see, okay, these profiles are good. Let's call them for the interview. Now they will ask me like, okay, Amit, when can we schedule it? Now again, based on that availability, the things get delayed, right? Week, 7 days, 10 days. That let's schedule it this date, this date. So that entire process takes a time, because this is now I'm telling you from that, the perspective, not from the candidate's perspective, from the hiring manager side, that because those people are actually involved in multiple activities, so they are not able to respond to the recruiters in that the stipulated time, right? And it happens with the other people as well, because in my firm, I've seen that a lot of the multiple people, they take the interviews, and also with everyone certain times, like if I ask that, okay, I'm occupied, let me ask my colleague that you take the interviews for the next week. Now if he comes back and say, no, next week I have a project delivery, so I might not be able to do it, schedule it after 2 weeks. So that how the things keep on getting stretched. And then the interview happens, then the recruiters keep following the people for the feedbacks, right? Are they, these people, what's the next step for them? Are we taking the next round, or we are keeping them, we are not taking the next round? So those things keep happening. So that is why that's the things get really stretched, but definitely they do, I mean, happen. So just stay, be little patient, and definitely keep practicing.
Like we have to practice also every time, because this,
Right.
I mean, once I do Power BI, I feel that I have forgotten SQL. I mean,
Same thing, same thing. No, I was saying to my husband, like, after the end of this training, definitely I'll become mad. Yeah, I was saying, because we got the concept, but it comes to formula, right? We were scratching like any our heads.
See, now that's a true thing, right? Because how, like, we have learned Excel, SQL, Power BI, Tableau, R, Python, 6 things, right?
Yeah.
6 things in 4 months. I mean, to be very honest, it's very, very tough, right? Because I myself, when I didn't learn all these things as a package. I learned them as one by one, whenever because I started my career with just Excel, right? 10 years back when I started the career, I just knew Excel, and that is how I got started. So in the company only, right, I got a chance to learn SQL. Then there is some project came up and I got a chance to learn SQL. The same thing happened with the Power BI, right? So I got certain projects. So the company said, okay, I mean, just get yourself equipped with Power BI. Now you have to start using it up. So in my company, I was the first person who actually used Power BI for the first time. And then, by just, like watching YouTube videos and going some here and there, I learned Power BI, and then I actually became an SME over there, that I established a complete team itself, that now was people who were now responsible for making the Power BI reports. Then out of an interest, I learned Tableau, right? Because I saw that, Tableau and Power BI are similar. So out of that interest, I learned Tableau as well. So, I mean, I can, totally understand it, because these things do take time. And definitely at least a year is required to, have a good hands-on on all the 5 or 6 things. And you definitely, you cannot have a good hand on all the 6 things. You will have to be little picky over here, right? To be very honest, you will have to say that, like, I understand Tableau well, so I am going to spend, give my best and explore the Tableau to the fullest. And I will keep Power BI as my good to have to, that, okay, I know Power BI, but I'm not proficient in that. Then same way you pick R and Python, you say, okay, I know I'm good with Python, but R is good to have. So that is how you will make yourself strong in 2 or 3 skills, and the rest 2 or 3 skills will be your the second hand, or the skills that but you're not proficient with. So that way, it will be easier for you. Rather than being a master of everything, it's better to be master of 2 things and keep the other things as your the good to have skills.
Yeah, I removed R from my resume.
Yeah, that is well said actually. Even my husband saying the same thing. Just concentrate on one BI tool. And as I asked Amit earlier, I'm planning to do a certification on Tableau because I like Tableau rather than Power BI. So I'm just focusing my full concentration on BI tool like Tableau. If I do my certification, right, will it help in order to get a
Definitely it will help. So go for,
Okay.
but there are two certifications that you have. One is
First
desktop specialist
associate? Yeah.
and one is associate. So go for the associate one, not the specialist.
Okay.
Right? Because
And I
associate
took
specialist is
Python.
very basic.
Yeah, the thing is like I was planning to do masters, but it needs some dedication. I can't do that because I have a very small kid. So I inquired about some courses in universities. They have exclusively for this analytics, like data analytics short term course. Will that be an added advantage equivalent to MS, or will that help me getting a job?
Really not. I mean, not to be very honest, because this is something a concept that I've seen that has started up, but I have not seen a lot of. I mean, these are more suitable for the people who are like college pass outs, right?
Okay.
Since you already have some experience, you have the background experience of all these things, so you really don't need to go for that.
Okay.
Like after the course, I will suggest go for the Tableau certification. That will be definitely a plus point for you.
Okay.
And once you clear that up, and then you look out for a job, it will be very easy to get that.
Okay.
If you will spend that time on that university and all, the things will get very stretched, right? At least that degree will be of at least an year, right? You will have to
Yeah, because
do.
my ultimate aim was to do masters, but it is highly impossible for me. I couldn't get time, so I opted for this second thing. Even that is taking an year. This micro masters, right? Data analytics. So that of asking you, even that is taking 11 months.
So yeah, because that is the bare minimum time that you will have to spend, but
Yeah.
and you will study the same things. Nothing will be different over there.
Okay.
You will be studying the same things over there.
Okay.
Right? Because I have created the content for many of the universities as well, right? Upgrade and all. So they are partnered with IIMs and IIT Kozhikode. So they have the self-paced videos on the same content that you're studying over here.
Okay.
And do you mention your sorry?
Doing the certification is best then. Instead of going for that high tuition, we
correct,
can do individual certification.
Your tool, do that tool specialization rather than going that degree part.
Yeah.
And Amit, do you mention your educational details as well in your resume, or you just omit?
Yeah, I have mentioned that up. So just a small box. So this is what I have mentioned. So my scores are not something that I'm very proud of. So I've not kept them away. So that I have. Yeah.
Okay, because I have not done BTech, and so all my educational details have gone from there. I mean, I don't mention them in my resume.
See, after if you have some experience, you really don't need it. But I can also now remove that because once the people have 5-6 years of experience, now no one asks you, right? Like, how much did you score in the BTech, or have you done a BTech or something like that? Because they know now that this person is basically already working for the 5 years. Now he is, a experienced guy of that technology.
Okay, yeah, that's it.
Do we need to hide the previous experience? Because I am not going back to my legacy systems. I have 6 years experience in IT. Do I need to mention that also?
No, sorry.
No, I don't want to go back to the legacy system. So I'm learning this new technology. I have experience.
You can mention those experience, and what you can do is you can try to little bit add the data science skills in that previous experience, so that it gives an impression that you were using those things previously as well. Okay. Not at a very deeper level. Just mention the high skills over there, and then you can tell that because you got a chance to learn Tableau, sort of that interest to learn Power BI, and because you found that profile to be very interesting, so you upgraded yourself onto other tools as well. So that way you can add it.
Okay. Yeah. Attributes we'll be seeing in the next class, right? It's already.
Okay. Yeah. Attributes and Pareto chart we'll discuss in the next class.
Amit, a quick doubt. There's two charts in Tableau, like tree charts and heat maps, separate charts. If I try to draw those two, I mean.
No, I didn't get it.
There are two separate charts for tree charts and heat maps.
Separate charts, I mean, You are talking about this one? Or what? Like, this is the chart that you have.
Yeah,
Green
that
map.
is, yeah, that heat map's also there, right? The second one up, first row, yeah,
This one.
yeah.
So this is just the same thing. Basically, the color intensity over here and over here. So these are both same. If you come over here, so just what it does is it just gives this the the size over here. So typically we don't go with this. We generally use this chart only, this heat map.
Okay.
So this we use this because this color intensity tells us. So we use this for that purpose. Right? Like if you will just show you over here. So heat map. Right? So this is the chart. When the items are more, so that is why it looks very dense. Otherwise, when the items are less, right? So this is how this heat maps look like. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. Well, so that is where we'll take a pause. So I think we'll now connect on Monday morning. Oh no, Monday evening, right? So Monday to Friday, right? So Monday evening. Your Monday evening would be like Tuesday morning, right?
No,
So
for
we can
us-
all in the meantime we can work on the Titanic case study.
Okay.
So we can discuss on that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your suggestions and session.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Amit. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.